So, hi everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Florinana. And for those of you that haven't worked with me, the foundation of all my work is very deeply rooted and primarily orientated to deeper remembering of true nature. And we journey with the somatic experience with the body so that the revelations of what we are through resourcing deepest silence, through orientating to the absolute unchanging reality, we can embody that remembering. We can bring all of us with us. And so we journey with the somatic experience, especially because sensations bridge you to the unconscious mind. But I didn't really want to talk so much about the recipe that we use, and I have made other videos on that, and there's plenty of other avenues in which you can explore what we're doing. One of the things I wanted to present today, which is very much embedded in our way of working, and that is the natural and organic transition when you're relaxing into an unfolding within yourself. So you're cultivating acceptance and allowance and surrender. When that's unfolding, and let's say you're working on healing a trauma, so you have a big separation, there's trauma involved, so there's, to some degree, a process of undoing the layers of trauma. But there's a certain point in that healing process where you're going to want to make the leap from the paradigm of healing into a transcendence of the paradigm within which healing was even needing to occur. And for that leap to happen, there wants to be some soft inquiry. Then there wants to be an element of, there's an invitation wants to be embedded within the unfolding, within the allowing, within the inclusion of all the layers and the pains and the separations and the memories. But if you truly deepen through the experience that you're embracing, and to deepen is to allow the experience to change and let yourself change through greatening intimacy with the experience. But what I'm noticing is what appears to be a tendency that wants letting go of to remain in a sort of on one level, it can look like identifying with form, or with the feminine, and sort of getting stuck in processing and kind of not making the leap into the kind of source remembering or the unchanging nature that precedes all experience. But on another level, I'm seeing kind of to a greater degree a kind of mental structure because of the traumatization of humanity, and right now it is very much taken the world stage, and because that is pushing new material to the surface. So I deeply honor the role of trauma healing. But what I'm noticing is the field of division, the polarization, the extent to which things can feel polarized seems to be compounding a tendency to identify maybe with the heart, you could say, which is kind of going to be continually seeking love, nurture, kindness, and that is a beautiful thing. But I invite you to explore identification with those qualities. I invite you to explore anything that is keeping you from fully emptying yourself out in the face of a phenomena, in the face of a trauma moment or a possibility of experience. And this does require on some level some inquiry, you know, and within our work that looks like the exploration of the sense of I or me, the experiencer, the witnesser. What is it that's having the experience? And that allows you to begin to unpick yourself from the experience itself. And that really takes you from a paradigm of trauma healing into the complete consumption and falling away of the entire setup, the entire memory field or morphogenic field within which you're entangled collapses, and the capacity to be re-traumatized and to it re-entangled is gone, because you no longer carry that structure in your psyche. You're expressing in a coherent way qualities of true nature. And this is a really essential leap that in our work is just very embedded. It's not, you know, I don't find people getting stuck there in our work, because primarily, even when I'm supporting in trauma healing, that invitation is there constantly, and there's a constant referencing of the absolute and resourcing of the absolute and deeper silence as a gateway into the realization of oneself, kind of prior to the capacity for a phenomena and an experience in which trauma can happen. So there are lots of layers to this as an inquiry. And for example, in my group, one of my groups right now, this month, we're exploring the senses. And so within that, there, through a deepening unification with sense perception, there is a natural point, if the absolute is being presenced within that, there is a natural point where the senses begin to empty out of self. The center empties out, and this becomes a very key initiation within the disidentifying with processing, with kind of continually, repeatedly revisiting the same thing because of the memory of sensation and experience, you know, and what the sensory pulls you back into. And that emptying out leads to a deeper revelation of oneself, an insight of oneself as not the senses. So that's an important initiation within that spiral that will naturally occur. But I just wanted to offer this as a kind of invitation, because I am noticing, let's say, an emphasis on trauma healing at times when I feel like what is actually needing to be presenced in simplicity is the absolute, the contrast of emptiness and no self wants to be present, the revelation of no self, and which allows one to come into the comprehension of the illusion of the separate self. And if this isn't being present, then you can heal trauma for the rest. You'll be healing trauma for the rest of your life. I mean, there's no end to the material available for that to be a process. And it will make the spiritual initiations that will want to push through whatever work you have done, you will be opening doors, and those doors need to be supported through comprehension. And that is why insight inquiry, softly held within the natural unfolding within our work, you know, is very, very, very essential to that revelation at a deeper level of who you truly are, and that this brings in the true freedom, the freedom of true nature. And so this is kind of a theme that I have been kind of circumventing for a long time, finding myself kind of sitting at the bridging point and at times struggling to kind of show up in the way I'm being called to in the face of that, because of the structures and expectations and needs that people have for the traumas to be heard and felt and seen, and I respect that. But the emptying out of the belly is what gets resourced here, and in that there can be within this, there's a, you know, being vulnerable doesn't mean you need, you know, you end up discovering a depth of transparency that allows there to be intimacy, but you only share what needs to be said. If something arises and it feels intense, you can sit with that in a really deep way and it can just deepen quickly. There doesn't need to be, you know, so what I'm encouraging is, rather than immediately leaping into the story tied to what has been pushed to the surface, be silent, deeply still with what is occurring, and let it deepen, and let the nature of your experience there transform, and let what be open to who and what you are there becoming something new. And so, and in this way, less will need to be said. There will be less of a gripping or clinging to morphogenic fields of experiencing within which re-traumatizing is kind of a norm and kind of entangling. It's like a loop that kind of really wants exiting through resourcing what precedes, what you are before movement, before sound, before breath. What is it that's unchanging and unmoving? And so I'm aware within each person, this process of what I'm describing could look very different. And of course, all that's needed is for you to deeply follow what's happening within yourself and honor that deeply. But my invitation is to notice where you find yourself fixing or stopping at a certain point of growth within your experience, where there's acceptance, there's allowance, there's awareness of trauma, and you've healed it, but it still keeps coming up. You have a kind of approach around yourself of like the fragility of yourself, and that fragility needs constant tenderness. And when you empty, when there is a deep emptying out in the belly, that fragility kind of dissolves, and there is something that remains, and it isn't exclusive of vulnerability. So to be vulnerable, I don't need to be in crisis. I don't need to, you know, be traumatized. I can show you my deepest self, and that could be a very silent, open experience, and there's vulnerability within that, and I could within that share an emotion. I could be sharing an experience I'm having, but within that there is an emptiness that allows it to be combined with that vulnerability, a deep invincibility. And I'm encouraging the coming online of that invincibility within form, because so many spiritual people that I meet and know are way more potent than they quite realize. But the potency is the potency of spirit. And that potency of spirit is being called upon in this time, not at the exclusion of your pains, your compassionate sorrow. What, you know, there's a deep sorrow for what's happening. I felt in so many, there's deep sorrow, but there is such courage that can be drawn, like going into that sorrow and feeling it deeply. And it doesn't need to go overly into the trauma healing and can be more just being in deep compassionate awareness within the human experience right now. And so what I'm really calling in you is for your God aspect to come online and for you to acknowledge your godliness. And so many people are kind of weighed down by overly processing and kind of being sensitive to one another. And that's a very beautiful thing. And, you know, the way God may respond, the way Shiva might respond to a situation may feel very different to how you as a separate person might respond to a situation. And so are you in touch with your own Shiva consciousness? Are you in touch with the potency of Shakti? And that doesn't mean ripping people's heads off. And in fact, I noticed that drama tends to come with a sense of identification. And these forces at the deepest level are symphoniously abiding and expressing beatifically, really. But yes, so I'm kind of really offering that call to my spiritual kin and my beautiful community to, yeah, within the honoring of trauma when it arises and resourcing the healing that you need to resource and really holding space to yourself, can you also call and bring online that God aspect within you that is clearly there? Because the difference between your state of consciousness and when I meet people who I feel are truly traumatized, like they're truly traumatized and they are living a life that is compounded by that trauma in their like, as in, you know, most people in my community are doing jobs that they want to be doing, or that they have an inspiration to generate a job that is closer to their soul. They're in relationships, or at least they're moving into more conscious relationship. You know, there's a massive difference between that and then those in the world that are in, you know, a violent relationship, or that are kind of being tyrannically oppressed by a kind of multinational company, or whatever it is, you know, are, you know, eating terrible food all day and drinking and doing cocaine and, you know, and so, you know, when you really see the state of consciousness that trauma looks like, most of you are not there. That is not you. And so there is no need, it is unnecessary for you to be processing the collective's experience. And it is more necessary now for you to be resourcing your God aspect and to call that into the presence of your life, and to resource that innate divine archetypal aspects of yourself in engaging with the world in this time. So if anyone would like to share more with me on this subject, if you have some curiosities, there's definitely a need to honor the unique situation of each soul. I'm aware what I'm saying may not meet you if you truly are in something that is just requiring a deep, compassionate self-awareness. And that is what I'm actually inviting you to do, because that is what God would do. That is how God shows up. If there is a pain, God encompasses that pain and consumes it. If there is a grief, you know, God comes in with the love and peace of true nature. And so let's go there together, and let's rest there together and rejuvenate there together, and let the world, let the old fall apart, but we don't need to necessarily fall apart with it. You know, you've probably done enough falling apart by now. And yeah, my invitation is, let's be what remains. Thank you for listening, and I wish you all a very beautiful, beautiful rest of your day.